In the bitter winter of 1942, as the smoke of Stalingrad thickened over the Volga, German officers reviewing prisoner rosters noticed something they considered absurd. Among the ranks of the Red Army's shooters were young women, scarcely in their 20s, with calloused hands and calm eyes. To generals schooled in Prussian doctrine, the notion of female combatants operating with rifles was not only unorthodox but laughable. Diaries from Wehrmacht staff records reflect this skepticism. One officer scribbled in December 1942, "If the Soviets have resorted to sending their daughters to the front, their manpower must be truly exhausted." They assumed these women were symbolic, a desperate propaganda gesture. They would soon learn otherwise, as one by one their most reliable infantrymen fell, victims of precise, patient marksmanship delivered from unseen positions. The Soviet Union had entered the war already leaning on women for industrial and agricultural labor. With 41% of its pre-war male population mobilized by late 1941, the pressure to expand combat roles became unavoidable. Sniping, with its emphasis on patience, endurance, and acute vision rather than brute strength, seemed particularly suited to this widening pool of recruits. By 1942, the Central Women's School of Sniper Training in Podolsk, south of Moscow, was producing cohorts of female sharpshooters at an industrial tempo. Training cycles lasted 3 months, with an average of 10,000 rounds fired per cadet. Archival records indicate the program graduated nearly 1,885 women between 1942 and 1945, of whom over 500 achieved confirmed kill counts above 30. Instruction was methodical: camouflage construction, range estimation, breathing discipline, and the meticulous maintenance of Mosin Nagant Model 1891-30 rifles fitted with PU 3.5x scopes. Each rifle was machined with tighter tolerances, costing the state nearly 1,200 rubles per unit, roughly 4 times the price of a standard infantry carbine. The investment, however, paid back in attrition inflicted on the Wehrmacht at a cost efficiency artillery barrages could not achieve. Frontline commanders initially doubted the value of these recruits. General Ivan Beloborodov later wrote in his memoirs that when the first all-female sniper platoon arrived at his 5th Army sector in the Kalinin front, officers muttered about babysitting liabilities. Yet within weeks, German patrol losses in the sector doubled, and prisoner interrogations revealed panic about the invisible witches who seemed to anticipate every movement. The battlefield evidence forced respect where bureaucratic skepticism had lingered. German soldiers, raised in a martial culture that dismissed women from the business of war, could not easily rationalize being pinned down by them. The psychological effect was out of proportion to the numbers deployed. A platoon of 6 Soviet women with proper concealment could immobilize a company-strength advance for hours, tying up supply lines and slowing the German timetable, a timetable already collapsing under the weight of overstretched logistics.
The rifles themselves were unremarkable in design, yet devastating in execution. The Mosin Nagant, chambered in 7.62 by 54 mm R, had a muzzle velocity of 865 meters per second. When paired with the PU scope, effective accuracy could be maintained out to 600 meters. German G43 self-loading rifles, while more modern on paper, suffered from gas system fouling under winter conditions, requiring cleaning cycles every 120 rounds compared to the Mosin's 300. The simple bolt-action mechanism gave Soviet snipers an advantage in extreme cold, where moving parts in semi-automatics tended to seize. Each shot was deliberate. The bolt worked smoothly, brass ejected with a metallic snap muffled by the snow. Soviet doctrine emphasized double hit methods, firing 2 shots within seconds, one to wound and draw rescuers, the second to eliminate them. This practice magnified both the tactical damage and the psychological terror. The most famous among them, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, had already carved her legend in the defense of Sevastopol. By mid-1942, she tallied 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers, her logbook authenticated by Soviet command and later corroborated by German records of missing personnel. In a letter dated June 1942, she wrote, quote, "Every soldier I take is one less crossing the steppe. My rifle is worth more than steel in a factory because it removes the enemy at his strongest point, the living man behind the gun." End quote. Pavlichenko became a symbol, but she was hardly alone. Roza Shanina, another sniper emerging in 1944, would record 59 confirmed kills in less than a year before being killed near East Prussia. Her diary entry on October 26, 1944, reads, quote, "It is strange to kill a man, stranger still that I feel no sorrow. Perhaps that is the true cruelty of war." End quote. Such documents strip away myth and reveal the stark industrial function of these women, weapons as much as soldiers, trained and measured by their output in corpses. German commanders began to record the toll. At Rzhev in 1943, after-action reports from the Ninth Army noted a sudden rise in officer casualties during trench inspections. Corps commands suspected Soviet sharpshooters were deliberately prioritizing leadership targets. Statistical analysis later confirmed that Soviet women snipers were directed to fire upon NCOs, radio operators, and forward observers first. The kill chain was designed not just to eliminate manpower, but to fracture unit cohesion. In January 1943, Colonel Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski remarked during a divisional briefing, quote, "Our infantry is haunted by phantom shots. Morale weakens not under bombardment, but under the knowledge that any movement may be punished with invisible death." End quote. What began as laughter among general staff had turned to grim countermeasures: increased deployment of counter-snipers, dogs to trace scent trails, and the issuing of periscopic trench viewers. None proved fully effective. By war's end, Soviet women snipers had accounted for an estimated 11,000 German dead, equivalent to an entire Panzer Corps' strength.
The sensory landscape of their work was unlike the thunder of artillery or the roar of tank engines. It was a quiet war, fought through optics, frost, and breath control. A sniper lying prone in a snowbank for 12 hours would feel her toes numb, her cheek frozen to the rifle stock, and the smell of gun oil mixing with pine and smoke from distant shelling. Patience was weaponized. German soldiers, accustomed to kinetic assaults, found themselves paralyzed by silence. The battlefield became a chessboard of invisible lines, every step potentially observed. One captured Lansker from the 95th Infantry Division admitted under interrogation in February 1943, "I fear no tank, for we can destroy it with pock guns. But a Russian girl in the trees? I cannot fight her because I cannot see her." Logistically, the Soviet program was a bargain. Whereas producing a T-34 tank consumed 17 tons of steel, 5,000 man-hours, and cost 270,000 rubles, training and equipping a sniper consumed roughly 500 rubles worth of ammunition, a single rifle at 1,200 rubles, and 3 months of food and housing. In cost-benefit analysis, each confirmed kill by a sniper was far cheaper than artillery shells, which averaged 200 rubles apiece, often requiring dozens to neutralize a single target. Stalin himself noted in a directive to the main political directorate in 1943, "A trained sniper returns his investment with every trigger pull. Support these schools as you would a factory of tractors." In the planned economy of total war, even death was measured against production quotas. Yet this was not a flawless system. Many women suffered from inadequate winter clothing and rations, their physical limits tested by prolonged exposure. Records from the Podolsk school show that of the 3,000 candidates enrolled in 1942, nearly 40% were discharged for health breakdowns before graduation. Optics shortages also plagued the program. By 1943, the demand for PU scopes exceeded production capacity, forcing some snipers to operate with iron sights, reducing effective range. German countermeasures grew more sophisticated over time. By 1944, Wehrmacht units employed sniper hunting squads with Zeiss-scoped K98R curb rifles, and Luftwaffe ground units occasionally strafed suspected sniper nests. Soviet casualty rates among female snipers were brutal, estimated at 70%. Of the 1,885 trained, only 500 survived the war. Their high losses underline both their frontline exposure and their effectiveness in drawing German fire. By the time the Red Army crossed into Eastern Europe in 1944, the laughter had long ended. German command viewed Soviet women snipers not as novelties, but as high-priority threats. Reports from Army Group North warn of unusually accurate fire disabling officers at great distances, and recommend immediate artillery strikes on suspected positions, even at the cost of ammunition wastage. The Wehrmacht, already straining under fuel shortages and Allied bombing of its industrial base, could ill afford such an efficiency, yet fear compelled overreaction. German diaries recovered from Kurland show men scribbling prayers before night patrols, fearful of a sudden crack in the forest. For soldiers who survived Kursk, Kharkov, or the frozen retreats of 43, it was often not the tank duels or the air raids that haunted them, but the single shot that came without warning. The legacy of these women extended beyond the battlefield. After the war, Soviet propaganda elevated their stories to mythic status, but the operational record remains undeniable. They represented a fusion of industrial efficiency and human resolve, trained with the same cold precision as any factory machine, yet operating in the organic chaos of combat. Their contribution was not decisive in isolation. No sniper, however skilled, could halt panzer divisions or destroy Luftwaffe squadrons. Yet in the aggregate, their kills, their disruption, and above all their psychological impact, constituted a force multiplier across the Eastern Front. The German laughter of 1942, recorded in staff memos and diary jottings, gave way to silence by 1945, a silence broken only by the memory of phantom shots in the woods. When the war concluded, many of these women returned home unnoticed, their rifles surrendered, their stories diluted by the Soviet state's shifting political narrative. Some, like Pavlichenko, toured abroad as symbols, others faded into obscurity. But their role in the attritional grind of the Eastern Front is measurable in casualty charts, production balances, and psychological warfare reports. They had transformed skepticism into dread, leveraging patience and precision into results as tangible as any armored brigade. German generals who once smirked at the notion of Soviet women bearing rifles had seen their men fall one after another, and in those losses lay a grim acknowledgement. The battlefield respects effectiveness, not gender. The Eastern Front was an engine of annihilation, where tonnage, firepower, and manpower were measured with ruthless calculus. Within that machine, the women snipers were small but efficient cogs, economic instruments of attrition. Their story underscores a larger truth about total war. Industrial societies will harness every resource, every body, every ounce of patience and steel. In the end, the Soviet Union's victory was forged not just in tank factories and ammunition plants, but in the frosted stillness of forests where young women lay motionless, waiting for the precise second to pull a trigger. The laughter of their enemies was buried along with the men they killed. In the brutal arithmetic of war, they proved that resolve and precision could cut through arrogance as surely as a bullet through bone.